Okay, very good.
You don't want to hear a change. Anybody else want to say any 2 cents before you?
So that's what I'm trying to get the amount.
I will call this regular council meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. Sarah, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Kathy, roll please.
Howe,
Here.
Hayes. Here. Barstow.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Picken.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Carter.
Okay, we have a quorum present. First thing on the agenda tonight is citizens' comments. And I know we're having a little technical snafu. So, Scott, you let me know when you're ready for that?
Yes, sir.
You'll let me know?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak tonight? Sarah? Name and address and how many cookies are left, please.
Okay. My name is Sarah McGuire, 321 Mulberry Street, Pataskla. I'm gonna go as fast as I can. Bear with me. I'm here on behalf of the Pataskla Lions Club to talk about Main Street Christmas. I'm sure you all know it was this past Saturday in downtown Pataskla, and I did look this ridiculous. It's really fun. First, I have some thank yous I want to say. Thank you to the City of Pataskla employees and city government, all of you, for your support of this event. I passed around some magazines, you can see. I also want to thank the street department, BJ, Mayor Compton, Jessica Cumbo, and anyone I missed for allowing us to close the roads, installing our Christmas banners on Main Street, which I think look beautiful, picking up trash, the trash we left, helping with permits, advertising on social media, and newsletters, and anything, again, I missed because, you know, sometimes we overlook and we don't mean to. While we did have some hiccups, overall we felt so much better knowing everybody was safe, felt safer, so thank you for closing the road. I was very happy to see more than a few of your faces at the event this year. Although this event is done by all volunteers, your presence as leaders of our community is noticed and appreciated, so thank you. Thank you to all of our cookie walk stops. There were 57 businesses, organizations, homeowners, churches, and groups who put a lot of time and effort and money and spirit into this event. We also had about 35 parade floats, so it was a beautiful parade, a beautiful day, couldn't have better weather. And I heard that the crowd was lined all the way down Broad Street as well as Main Street, so it was really well attended. And I hope that all of you got to see or hear some kids and grown-ups yelling for Santa, because that's my favorite part. So, also, there were a lot of people who could not participate but sponsored it anyways. There were ads in the magazine, and Energy Co-op was very generous. They bought all those bags, those big, red, beautiful bags. They paid for them, so wow. And thank you to the families who came. We're still counting the donations, but if you just do the math, it's at least $2,000 because each bag was at least $5. So at least $2,000 will go to our food pantries. So that's good. And thank you to the Pataskla Lions Club. I'm only a representative of them. They fund the event as one of the many service projects they do in our community. And a committee of about 6 people put this event on with well over 500 hours, playing all year long. So it's a lot of work. While all this is important, I also came to remind everyone what the true meaning of Main Street Christmas is. The cookies are wonderful, but this event is so much more than just cookies. How many times have you heard people in this town say that they long to restore our rural charm and small town feel? If you stood in the middle of Main Street on Saturday, you would have seen people calling out to their neighbors, laughing, smiling, singing carols, talking to each other, and enjoying Pataskala. That's what it's about. How many times have you driven down 310 and thought about the businesses who are there? If you walked around that day, you would have seen 21 of them with their doors open, their stores decorated, and love for Pataskala on display, giving back to a community who doesn't usually notice them. How many times have you seen a child's face light up when they see a Disney princess or a Spider-Man or a Grinch or Santa? Hundreds of families were able to make memories right down the street. They didn't have to go to Disney World. How many times have you wondered where the good is in the world? I have. I saw people sharing cookies. I saw the First Presbyterian Church feed more than 550 people a bowl of soup. Just to serve. That's it. They didn't take donations, they didn't take money, they just wanted to serve. And they've been part of our town for more than 100 years. I saw people being courteous to one another, and we even had families who didn't get a bag still donate money to the food pantry. So people of Pataskala don't have to go to bed hungry. So it's wonderful. How many times have you or someone you know had to force themselves to get ready for Christmas when they are grieving the loss of a loved one? Did you know that there were nearly 200 ornaments on the memory tree at Overflow? It was very moving. How many times have you had the opportunity to read Santa's letters? I got a few, I gotta mention. One little boy said, "I just don't want any more boo-boos." That's what he asked Santa for. There was a little girl named Abby. She wrote, "Dear Santa, can you please get me a real life dinosaur? I would be so happy if you did. I mean, you probably know I love dinosaurs, or my room wouldn't have them all over the place. Love, Abby." There was one little girl named Katrina. She said, "Dear Santa, I wish my mom was not sick, and I would like to have a pretty necklace this year." So these are all just samples of things that happened in our town, in the heart of our town. And it just goes to show you that it's more than cookies. I don't know how else to say it. So this is why everyone says it feels like a Hallmark movie. It's why we are Lions. It's why we serve. It's why we go through all the barriers and put the time and money and effort and frustration into giving our community a Christmas tradition. And as we all navigate the craziness of the Christmas season, I hope that hearing about what happened in our little city this past weekend makes everyone smile. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes. Sure.
I just wanted to say a couple different things while Sarah and Brian are here. This is what a full bag of cookies looks like. That's 57 stops on the cookie walk. I mean, it was amazing that the businesses each put 400 cookies together. That's not a small task to bag and tag those. That's substantial. You know, the other thing that was that Sarah didn't mention were the businesses that didn't participate in the cookies themselves. The other places that showed up, such as Presbyterian Church, but other places that had other free things available and other events available for all the kids and parents to enjoy, was really moving. I estimated there were 3,000 people down there, without question. And then the last item I wanted to mention was I have a anonymous donor that's going to match the $2,000 so that each food bank gets $2,000 this year.
Wow.
So,
Thank you.
and thank you, Sarah, Brian.
Anybody else wish to say anything? Again, thank you. This event is now cemented into Pataskala, and it's what people will look forward to, and I have to chime in too, and I appreciate the city working with us, and you know, closing that road like we do with the street fair. That's huge, and that's going to open it up to even more good stuff. So we got a lot of people helping us on this one, and as a member of the Summit Station Lions Club, I'm gonna try to light a fire under them guys to help us out next year, so kudos to the Pataskala Lions.
Mhm.
I thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Well done. I'm gonna cry if I talk too long, but it was, you're right, seeing neighbors talk, and I didn't get down on Main Street because we were giving out cookies, but I would peer down and just, hundreds of people and students that came in and, neighbors talking, and, someone said to me, it was like, wow, this is like our winter street fair, but like people are singing and people are like hugging, and I mean, it was pretty powerful. It was pretty moving for downtown.
Mhm.
So I can only see your eyes over the podium,
Yeah.
but being
Well,
short,
And
but it was,
I forgot to say, like, I couldn't mention everybody, but if you look at the back of the magazine, like, that's just a list of
yeah, it was
all
pretty
the
powerful.
people.
It's what we've been hoping for.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
it's funny, you don't know how many people, I kinda stayed in my spot doing what I was doing, so I didn't see everything, but then when you start to say, okay, the parade's starting in 5 minutes, then you could really see how many people were really down there. I had so many people say, I didn't know we had that many kids in this town, but they were glued
do.
to the curbs watching that parade, and it was awesome. So
Kids were talking about it at school
Yeah.
today.
and we had a
Good.
perfect storm, I mean, that
Well
weather,
done.
the weather was perfect, the turnout was great, so again, kudos.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak tonight, if you think you can top that?
No pressure. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Sarah.
Yep, thank you. Scott, you ready to go?
Almost.
Almost, okay, we'll move on. You ready? Okay, they're gonna give it a shot, very good. Our OSU students are here for their, the final mobility plan presentation. And if you'd introduce yourselves?
So my name's Lindsay Collins. I'm a second year master's student. I'm graduating in a couple weeks, and I think all of us are focusing in city and regional planning.
My name's Andrew, and I'm undergraduate, fourth year. Proud to have started my OSU career at the Newark branch.
Nice.
Very good.
My name's Sally Sherrill. I'm a second year graduate student in the CRP master's program.
Very good.
And we had a little bit of a technical difficulty, but we fixed it. So we're just gonna get our presentation open and then we'll get started.
And so the first couple slides on the presentation are basically us thanking all of you guys for letting us poke around in your town and have a chance to do some hands-on planning. So we just really appreciated the experience. I think even though all of us are in the city planning field, not all of us had gotten the chance to look at pedestrian activity and bike activity. So I think it's been a great learning experience for all of us. So we just wanted to say thank you.
You're welcome.
And so there's Sally riding a bike on the front page there. And then, this presentation is meant to summarize our final plan document that we're gonna be sending along to city staff, on Wednesday, and just to give you an idea of what we've been working on all semester. So this outlines kind of the contents of the plan itself. So there's your introduction, and then we give background on the project, background on Pataskala, which, maybe the project background isn't as useful for all of you guys, but it's useful for people who aren't from here. Then we conducted a transportation needs assessment to see, what kind of things maybe need to happen here. Then chapter 4 kind of explains the different design elements, like what is a bike lane versus a sidewalk versus a shared use path. And then chapter 5 describes how we divided up the areas of recommendation. So, for example, we have a downtown typology, which is just a fancy word for area of focus. So we have a downtown area, a suburban area, and then a rural area. And then chapter 6 is really where we make our recommendations and draw our conclusions. And chapter 7 has all of the survey results from members of the community, as well as some larger charts and tables that didn't quite need to be in the main body of the plan, but that were handy to have for reference. And so, this is, again, the area of interest for you. You can't maybe see the key from a distance, but it just outlines what areas are classified as your downtown area, your suburban areas, and then your rural areas. The suburban areas are in purple. The downtown area is in the dark blue, and the rural area that's north on 310 is in the yellow. So that kind of helps to clarify when you're thinking about where we're making our recommendations that we're gonna be talking about. This map is good to keep in mind because it lets you know where we're recommending different things. And Sally's gonna talk about some of our recommendations for Broad Street.
Alright, hi everybody. As you can see in that past map, recommendations are really focused on the two main corridors within Pataskala, Broad Street and 310. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about our recommendations for Broad Street. As Lindsay mentioned, we divided up our recommendations by these different areas, and we also divided them up into short, intermediate, and long term. So our short term recommendations are really focusing on what you can do right now within the next 5 years. Maybe some of the easier things, the lower cost things. Our intermediate recommendations are anywhere from 5 to 20 years in the future. And then our long-term recommendations are focusing on the full build-out of those roads in your future development, 20 years and on, and looking at the really full picture end goal of what we're recommending. So I'm going to talk first about the Broad Street downtown area. This is basically that central part of Broad Street between Columbia Road and Coriolis Drive. I think actually it goes a little bit further out. But this is our first area of focus. We're thinking that this is a great opportunity to really get started in the short term on making some interventions. So our main recommendation here is to add a shared use path to the north side of the street. This would be a two-way path that accommodates both pedestrians and cyclists, and is separated from traffic, so it really provides that safety. We're also recommending to really focus on connecting existing fragments of sidewalks that you already have, so really improving that network so you can get easily from one place to another. And we would also start looking at planting street trees and working on the landscaping to really give some identity to this area. In the intermediate, we're looking at extending those sidewalks further out from the central area, installing bike parking facilities in major destinations like the Kroger, increasing pedestrian safety by adding signal crossings, and we're recommending a gateway feature, maybe somewhere right outside of this building to signal your entrance into the downtown area, warn drivers to slow down, you're entering a new place. And in the long term, we're really focusing on this particular part in the short term, so in the long term, you'd be looking at maintaining this as you're widening the roadway. And we're looking at a 5-lane build out of the road, which you can see in this diagram up here. Then in the suburban section, so that's more of the outer parts of Broad Street on either side. And in the short term, we would be focusing on starting by just adding stuff on the roadway. Sort of a temporary measure in those areas to increase safety for cyclists, before then in the intermediate term, extending that shared use path out in either direction. Installing street furniture and lighting, and really improving crosswalks everywhere that a pedestrian or bicyclist would cross in the street. Then in the long term, looking to extend that shared use path all the way to the city limits. Focus on important intersections that would then cross, such as Summit Road, which was mentioned earlier in the evening, as a major intersection, improving safety there with pedestrian and bicycle crossings. As you're building out that area, adding sidewalks on the south side, narrowing driveways as these paths are crossing it to reduce moments of conflict between vehicles and pedestrians. and working on installing bioretention features, especially as you're doing your road widening to help with your drainage and stormwater issues. And so these are our renderings for that long-term future build-out. One of the main differences you can see between the downtown and suburban is really adding lighting features that are giving it that character. Sorry. And then Ryan's going to talk about the recommendations for 310.
Good evening. My apologies I wasn't able to introduce myself, hastily getting the flash drive over to the computer. But my name is Ryan Volrath. I'm also a second-year master's student at OSU in the planning department. So State Route 310 both has a downtown and a suburban component, just like Broad Street. We also have a rural component because specifically far to the north, we felt that characterized the setting better. But to get started on State Route 310 downtown, which encompasses 310 a couple blocks north of Broad and then down through the old Pataskala downtown. In the short term, we're recommending that the speed limit be lowered to improve cyclist and pedestrian safety. One of the strategies for doing that is to actually narrow the traffic lanes and use the extra pavement space to make a bicycle lane. And in combination with increased signage, hopefully that can create a bit of a culture where cyclists and pedestrians can feel safer using that area, and they currently do. And also to install bike parking with lighting, helps create a sense of space. Later that can be used for like a bike parking art installation as well, and that again encourages the use of cycles. In the intermediate term, we're looking to recommend bike boxes to turn off of 310 into some of the residential areas. We also realize that this area might be subject to road widening later, depending on the growth that Pataskala continues to experience. And at that point in time, we'd also recommend implementing specifically in some of the non-motorized infrastructure, some permeable pavers and other green infrastructure to help sort of mitigate some of the runoff that will come from the increased pavement in that area. And then in the long term, just keep up the maintenance with the bicycle infrastructure, the green infrastructure, to keep the long-term impacts minimized. The next area of 310 that we'd like to talk about is the suburban typology. That is primarily located south of State Route 310 from the old downtown to the city limits. There's a lot of planned unit developments and it has a very suburban feel. And so in the short term, we're going to recommend adding crosswalks to all the new intersections that go into this area, as well as reducing some of the, oh, it's not mine, sorry. As well as requiring some of the developers, when those intersections and planned unit developments are going in, to connect these developments via shared use paths, because a lot of times these developments back up to each other but aren't necessarily connected, and that can help the different neighborhoods have a more cohesive feel. As well as in the short term, adding low-cost infrastructure like painting sharrows on the roads that are already there. In the intermediate term, we would encourage a widening of the shoulder to help provide some space for bicycles and planting of street trees. And then in the very long term, adding a buffered bike lane, bike boxes just like we had in the downtown area to help increase safety as cyclists turn off of State Route 310. And then again, looking at green infrastructure like bioretention and permeable pavers to help mitigate some of the runoff. And then State Route 310 rural, the rural area is going to be north of Broad Street past the downtown typology. So this is currently a 2-lane road. And because of the infrastructure and the way that the city limits run up against State Route 310, In the short term, adding painted sharrows to the current shoulders is a good way to increase bicycle safety and awareness for drivers. In the intermediate term, we recommend improving the streetscape, adding street trees and widening that shoulder some, so that in the very long term, a 2-foot buffer can be added between the shoulder and the roadway for maximum cyclist safety. And for State Route 310, these are our renderings to give you a bit more of a visual of what we are conceptualizing for State Route 310. And then while I'm up here, I'm also going to talk a little bit about some of the external funding opportunities that we researched as a part of this project. This is a list of all of the potential financial sources that we looked into. For a variety of reasons, we did end up choosing the Clean Ohio Trail Funds as probably the best candidate for a future funding application. And as part of the 7th chapter, our appendices, we have written up some mock responses to at least the 2017 version of this grant application, at least as a starting point for Pataskala to maybe launch off of in the future should you choose to apply for that grant.
And then lastly, I'd like to talk about the trail network we also provided you. This is about kind of thinking about the whole region and how it can link up to currently existing bicycle and trail networks in our neighboring cities here around New Albany, Granville, and of course Columbus. So the blue lines are where our recommendations are, so the bicycle infrastructure would already be there, and then the green lines are further recommendations to kind of connect the blue lines to the yellow, and the yellow lines are existing networks, and the dashed yellow lines are trails, bike lanes that are going to be planned. And other than that, we would just like to thank you once again. All of us have learned a lot of useful hard skills, and it's been a pleasure working for you guys, and we really hope that the efforts that we put into this help you in the future and provide the residents of Pataskala with options. Not trying to take away cars or anything, but just want to make sure that, if you want to ride your bike to school one day, you can without being hit by a car.
Great.
Good point.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
guys have-
we wanted to know if you had any comments, concerns, further recommendations before we head out tonight.
Anything, questions, anything for the folks?
I would just say thank you very much.
Yep.
I appreciate your enthusiasm.
Yep.
Look forward to getting the final report.
Thank
Yep,
you.
we'll get it on Wednesday.
Sounds good, thank you.
Thanks, thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak tonight? All right, introduction, discussion, and approval of consent agenda matters.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow, seconded by Mr. Hicken. Discussion? And roll.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Carter,
All right, consent agenda passes. On to reports. Well, of course, you heard from Sarah. The cookie walk was a huge success. On Thanksgiving Day, we served, I'd say, close to 100 meals at our, at the church downtown. Jerica, who was in here not too long ago discussing that. We had a great day, nice community dinner. That's starting to take off also, so some really neat stuff happening here in town. And obviously the parade too, that was off the charts. Let's see. Some of these things I know the chief is antsy to talk about, so I'll leave them for him. And I'm sure Scott will talk about ED 411, so I'll leave that for you. Mr. Hicken.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple items. A reminder that by a happenstance of the calendar, we would be meeting the first and the third Tuesday in January due to the New Year's Day holiday and Martin Luther King Day. So just something to think about. Also, as the current council leadership would phase out and begin the next part, the first meeting in January, we are thinking about a 6:30 swearing in for the council individuals that would be taking their seats or retaking their seats, as the case may be, followed by a regular organizational meeting at 7 o'clock, and follow that with the regular council meeting to follow. And I guess I would say one thing, this weekend is the firefighter toy drive. Saturday from, I believe it is 10 to 3. Does that sound right?
Yep.
My apologies for not having the exact time, but just an FYI, anybody that's got toys, that it certainly goes to a good cause. Every toy stays within this region. They're not shipped to someplace else in Ohio. And the firefighters do an absolutely fabulous job. More than once, I've helped them, and walk into the YMCA and see like 30 bikes that people have donated is truly amazing. And then it gives kids in our community a chance to have a Christmas. So that's all, at least for that right now.
And the drop-off is at the Y?
I believe the drop-off is at the fire station.
Fire station 1, yep. So Tuesday the 2nd and Tuesday the 16th are our January meetings,
That's
correct? Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Hicken. Mr. Zatz?
Nothing, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Mr. King?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple items. I placed on each one of your desks a brochure about an open house that HER Realty is gonna have. They are listing the Hazleton Town Center, down where the Mexican restaurant is located. New owners of that center, and they're trying to attract some people. Everybody's invited, so if you're available, feel free to stop in. That is on December 14th from 5 to 7. It's gonna be held in the bank area of that strip center. If you're available, I encourage you to stop. Friday at noon is the staff holiday Christmas lunch. If you're available, please stop in, say hello, grab a sandwich. It'll be here in council chambers. First meeting in January, council will have my 2018 projects and initiatives plan. That will include each department, what an overview of what our goals are for the upcoming year. Jamie sent out his most recent monthly financial report. I just encourage council to, always take a look at those. I find them very interesting to read, and provides a good snapshot of where we are year to date financially versus previous years. And then the last thing I'll mention is that those council members who will be getting sworn in, and also the mayor, don't forget that there's a $500 tech stipend for each term. For council members, if you were to buy an iPad or computer, something like that, something to keep in mind. We just ask that you turn in a receipt once you buy something, and you would be reimbursed by the city up to $500.
If I might, Mr. King, one little addition to that, and I'm glad you mentioned that, but council should remember, if you have, at that swearing in at 6:30, you should also feel free to have either number one, an official that is allowed to do it, swear you in if you desire, and also have a family member to hold the Bible or jeer at you or whatever.
And that's
Yeah,
all I have.
and once I'm sworn in, if you want me to swear you in, I'll swear you in, but if you have somebody else, you're welcome to get somebody.
I'm sorry about that, Mr. King, I forgot.
Oh, I'm done, thank you.
One other thing, if you're having someone else swear you in, if you'd let me know, typically those people may bring your oath of office for you. If you need me to create one for you, I'll be more than happy to do so. Just let me know.
Mr. Walther?
Couple quick questions, BJ. Wondered if we received, as the gentleman from the insurance company had mentioned, that we received the dental quote for the next day.
We did.
Okay.
And I will get that out to council,
Okay.
so apologize about that.
Second question.
Sure.
Can you give us a status for the advertisement for the park management? Park manager replacement?
The advertisement has been created, and it will be placed in, the paper, it's being sent to the paper, and also Dave provided to me a budget for soccer programs, so we know everything that's going into it. So my goal is, early January to have somebody hired in that position. By the time we advertise and interview and do background checks, it usually takes 4 to 6 weeks.
Do you know what will be the time frame for those people to get in, for potential applicants to put in their resume?
I'll email that to council tomorrow. I apologize for not having those dates.
You have the floor, go ahead.
Police dog, wanted to talk a little bit about that. I know you'd sent out a
Yes.
email talking about the auction for it. I wanted to mention that, and I don't remember exactly the community, I'll get you the information. There's a community that just had its police dog killed. And I just wanted to look maybe into that, maybe one more step, and I'll get that to you, Chief, that maybe there's an avenue for
Is it
that.
a Ohio community? or-
Mhm, it is.
Is it?
I'll get it for you.
I was-
I didn't have a chance to write it down this afternoon, so, but they had their police dog killed.
Well, that's,
In the line of duty.
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because, I was hoping for, aside from that, to get an authorization from council to proceed with advertising for the auction. This evening, I was hoping for a motion for that, but, certainly council's prerogative if we wanna take a look at that avenue as well.
Okay, I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that.
Okay, I'll get you the information on it.
Anything else for BJ? Okay, Nate?
Wanted to share with you Friday, BJ sent an email, but publicly I'd like to say he passed another EPA certification, which I'm very proud of that guy. And that process is not a cookie walk or a cakewalk. So folks stepping up to do that not only confirms their commitment to the business, but it allows them to stand up proud with some other folks that go down that path. We do that to ensure compliance and kind of what I call the solemn oath, if you will. So anyhow, very proud of that. We wrapped up our land application program for the year last week. It went very well. I think to date, I have to look, there might be one other application, but it's the most product we've applied in one event, which means we were able to store this product for closer to 8 months than the 6, that we were getting creative with our storage with the conveyor and things like that. So very happy with that. Nothing really new out of the ordinary to share. I will say, since it is our last meeting of the year, I appreciate all of you and your support and some of your wisdom that you provide me as the utility director as we work together to get a good service out to our customers. So I appreciate that and look forward to 2018. So cheers. Or if you have any questions. be
Any
happy to
questions
answer
for
any
Nate?
questions.
It's not a question as much as a comment. I appreciated you including the article you had written for the water, also it was very interesting. And it was, of course, it was in your attachment, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, so did I.
Feel
No
proud.
lie.
I'm proud of it.
Okay, anything else for Nate? All right, Alan?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple updates. First one's Columbia Road culvert. I mentioned the last council meeting, we've had some challenges on that. We talked about that at the Streets Committee, so I'll spare you the details unless you have any questions. Other than it's running about 2 weeks behind schedule, and we did pave today, minus the surface course. We'll have to do the surface course in the spring when the weather is available and the plants are open. So that one's scheduled, it should be December 18th, so about 2 weeks from today, we should have that one open. The Columbia Road Bridge, that one also had some challenges, worked with ODOT to work through those, come up with a solution. However, that one will also need to have a little bit of closure in the spring to solve those problems. But we will get that open, should be open next Monday to traffic to get us through the winter. And the last thing is, I guess, more of a question. Mr. Hicken mentioned the Joint Fire District's toy drive. They have asked us for use of the message boards, and I know we just did some stuff with message boards, so wanted to bring that question to council.
I would I guess I would say that, I have received, had several discussions with firefighters asking, saying that on the day of the drop-off, traffic slows and sometimes sits in the road. And, notifying the public that, be aware of stop traffic in the vicinity of the fire departments is in the public interest. And I would, if I understand, what Mr. King told me earlier tonight, the legislation that we passed earlier this year, while necessary, and I was happy to be a part of that as well, it means that council would have to approve, approve first, then amend if we choose to amend, use of the signs to tell people to watch for slow traffic in front of the fire station. Now, I don't know if that,
Well, and Brian, chime in here if I get this wrong, but that legislation listed a number of events that are not city events, but the city would provide services to, resources to. And in order to change that list, and certainly not going to be too rigid, but to change that list and go contrary would need an amendment to that list if we want to do it permanently. What if it was a one-off, could be done via motion?
I think you have to amend the legislation if you want to check, because I think they did create just a list.
It
I think if it's not on that list, then you'd have to change the legislation to either add an event to the list or add some language that gave you some wiggle room outside the list. Which is easy to do,
But not for next week.
Yeah. My,
The events
yes,
next
my
week.
understanding of the legislation that we passed was a pre-authorization essentially for the city to utilize message boards and so forth on those items. They wouldn't have to come back to council, there wouldn't be a resolution, there wouldn't be anything needed to utilize those signage, or signage if it were available for those items.
correct.
I'm wondering if, as a pre-authorization, to authorize them to rent or take a donation or something along those lines for a message board that would provide for traffic safety, is that an avenue to go through? If, I'm not saying that they're gonna do this every year, they may change locations. But for this year, we know that it's in front of the fire station, and for the use of that, to be set up and taken back down on Saturday, does that have to change the ordinance to do that?
Yeah, I think the spirit of the legislation was that those were the events that where the signs were going to be used. So, I mean, now if you're gonna say, well, I have a list, and we've prearranged those, but now we can authorize one-offs every other time, you almost didn't need the legislation. You could have just went with one-offs. I guess you don't have to. I mean, you could do it either way, but you've created a system.
Well, I agree with you, Brian, it's a slippery slope. I mean, we could do this for every event, you're right. We identified a list of events that we were gonna use the signs for, you're absolutely right.
But one of the reasons we got those was obviously for detours and traffic and Pelotonians, things like that. Where do you draw the line on?
But isn't this traffic?
This is traffic, and that's what I mean. If the street department,
Excuse me, I mean, I think there's we're gonna charge the fire district for the use of their.
No, that was just a
Just a minute, let me finish. We're gonna charge the fire district for the use of a sign to help with traffic control for their children's toy drive. That's the concept, that's Councilman Scrooge. So, to me, there's a difference between a sign that these signs that advertise an event, say, turn left here to go to the something, okay? And a sign that says, hey, motorist, be careful, there's traffic congestion ahead. The second one is a completely legitimate use of city funds and city employees that should require no prior authorization from council. That's just common sense. However, a sign that says, hey, turn left here to go to the whatever it is, that is promoting a private event, and to me, that's not an appropriate use of city funds. That's city funds and city employees being used to support a private event. So we have a sign up that says, hey, at Summit and Broad in August when Pelotonia comes through, be careful, we put it out the day before, don't come through here, or if you come through here, it's gonna be a delay, watch for, the police departments out there, et cetera, et cetera. Street fair, don't turn and go down 310 because you run into the street fair. Stop, be careful in front of the fire station on Saturday because there's gonna be people there dropping off toys. That's a public safety function. So we've gotten the tails wagging the dog here, and you know, so.
It's not like we're saying, please go buy a toy. We're saying, please be careful.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes.
To clarify,
Mr. King.
I was gonna say, to clarify, when it was asked of me, the way I interpreted the question was use to advertise, not for traffic control. If it's simply traffic control, I wouldn't ask that question. If that's all we're talking about, I think that's pretty much.
And that is look, is it probably dual? It's probably dual, but people are gonna be, you know, cars, you know what it's like, cars are turning in there, dropping off stuff, and pretty soon there's a backup. Let's look out for this. At the same time, if the sign says toy drop off Saturday, 3 to 8, caution, watch for stop traffic, I think that's perfectly fine as well. And I would also point out that I don't wanna get locked in on a sign issue here. Well, the events that we delineated in the previous legislation involved staff, resources, and sometimes equipment, all that the city agreed to be involved with, not just a sign. It was putting out trash, it was putting up barricades, or picking up trash, putting out barricades, it was much more involved than that. And I agree with Mr. Barstow's statement that I don't wanna make it where every time somebody like Pelotonia or these guys or anybody says, our event is going to cause some type of delay or safety issue in your city, would you put up these signs and let people know that it's happening and to look out for it, that we have to come back and keep amending the list. That was certainly not what my original concept of the legislation was for.
I think you have your direction.
That's fine. No, I was just gonna say, I think it's fair to say that if they need traffic signs, and like
If
what
it's-
I love what Tim said, that this Saturday, like it gives the motorist a couple of days to understand what's coming, but it's also, serves both purposes.
Traffic related.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I think that, I agree with everything that was said here, but I think moving forward, we do need to come up with something so that our hands aren't tied behind our back when something as simple as the fire department needs to use a sign. I mean, I think we've overthought this way too much, and if somebody needs the sign for a safety issue or for something, an event like this that's obviously, you know, for the kids, maybe we need to look at that legislation again and add some flexibility to it so that we don't have to have this again, so.
May I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
I think, I rarely say things, but I think that sometimes we are so afraid of ticking people off that, this is for the good of the order. This is really for the good of, I mean, we have these amazing signs to serve our community that are purchased with, taxpayers' money. This is a perfect example of how to serve the community, not only in safety, but in goodwill. So, everything, I agree with little bits and pieces of what everybody's saying, but I think that sometimes we are so afraid of, someone's irritation that we come up with, like what Tommy's saying, we just overthink things. I think that, there are multiple reasons why using these signs for, charitable events, as long as it's not saying, please, you know, go out and, it's not pushing someone's agenda, it's just, it's safety and it's goodwill, and that's what we want in this town, so that's my 2 cents.
Chief, I have a question for the chief. Is there any plan to have any sort of traffic control from the department or from the sheriff's department for this? Does that seem to be a necessity or no?
No, there's nothing planned, so I would very much welcome the signs.
Okay.
Thank you. Perfect. The end.
You have your direction, thank you, sir.
Which saves money because then we don't have to the chief doesn't have to call somebody on special duty or overtime or tie up an officer to direct traffic. Not that that's not a good thing to help direct traffic for that event, but it just, that, you know, as Mrs. Hayes says, when you start looking at sort of the bigger picture of this, you know.
Yep.
So.
Traffic and safety related, it's all
Yes, sir.
yours.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Anything else? Yes, sir.
I have a question. You had mentioned on the, Alan, on the 2018 streets program, you had mentioned in here going out for RFPs for engineering services. Are you also gonna go out for inspection services?
That is the plan.
Okay, so for both of them. All right, perfect, thanks.
Anything else for Alan? Mr. Fulton?
Thank you, sir. One thing to highlight is ordinance 2017-4303. That is an ordinance to amend the schedule of fees. The Planning and Zoning Department worked with the Development Committee to convey that there were certain things with the fees that we would have gaps as new legislation came through, such as with subdivision regulations and with cell towers. As those moved through, that those weren't accurately reflected in the fee schedule. Also, there were things that we've identified, such as a permit for a hot tub that we require. However, per the fee schedule, however, there's nothing in the code that has any regulations for how one reviews and approves a hot tub permit, so certain things like that were removed. Also, and that came through Development Committee, was recommended to move forward with an ordinance to amend it. Two things since that came from the recommendation from Development Committee have been altered. One, we had something in the fee schedule called antenna tower. Essentially, that was for like a cell tower. The new regulations for cell towers, they will be defined as wireless telecommunication facilities. So the fee schedule has been altered to reflect that, the change in nomenclature. Also, as the Planning and Zoning Department, in conjunction with the Public Service Department, as we continue to do our erosion and sediment control and things like that for development projects, we've added something for construction inspection for projects that do not have public infrastructure. And kind of the fork in the road that we hit when we do erosion and sediment control inspections is subdivisions, for example, that have public infrastructure being installed. We have an inspector on site being paid from the developer to inspect the infrastructure, pipe, roads, to make sure they meet city standards. And as part of that, that inspector can identify issues with erosion and sediment control during the process to allow the process we're establishing, door hanger, courtesy letter, violation letter, during those processes to make sure that the developer is aware of it and they have ample time to correct those issues. Problem we run into is when developments don't have public infrastructure, we don't have an inspector to be there as much as we would like to make sure the requirements of the code are being followed. So we added a provision for construction inspection in there, and that would be for major developments that don't have public infrastructure. For example, an AEP at the Parkway. That would be something that we would have funding available to have an inspector to go out there to look and make sure that everything is being followed. This would not be for something as if you're putting in a shed or a deck, wouldn't be required for that. It would be more major developments that don't have public infrastructure that would provide us with a funding source to go out and do inspections. This deposit would be just that. It would be deposit for the project to go out and inspect. Whatever is not used will be refunded to the developer. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anything for Scott?
Yes, sir. Did I hear you say that hot tubs are unregulated here in the city? Did I hear that right?
Hot tubs require a permit, and the permit, I believe, is $25, but in terms of regulations on how we review and approve hot tubs, nothing is in there.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Planning on a couple?
I'm just curious.
Mr. Walter?
Scott, I noticed and I appreciate you gave us a list of the different violations and by builder that's happened in the last 2 years. And I noticed there's mainly one developer, I guess, that has received the majority of the mayor's summons. What, out of the 17 times that they've been given a court summons, how many times have they actually had to resolve this via mayor's court?
I believe some of those things, while it went to mayor's court, there was some work with the zoning inspector and prosecutor to say, if you can have these things resolved by such and such time, we can dismiss this. So I don't think anything ever resulted in penalties or fines. It
That
was
was
all
gonna be
just,
my next question, is what were
it
the
was all
damages
just
at
court
that point?
costs with the understanding that they resolved these. It was, unfortunately, it had to get to that in these cases, but with the planning and zoning department saying you need to do this and it elevating to that point, it's got their attention and now it's been working much, much better that going out and doing the inspections, it's very difficult to find anything wrong. So
So the 17 violations were mainly several months ago, they just haven't been very recently?
I would say maybe spring into the summer.
Okay. Good. One other quick question, on the comprehensive plan, I know you've stated here that you've got a candidate selected. When do you think you'll be sharing that information with council? The price, the scope, that kind of stuff?
I am putting together an email and also looking at scope of, like we talked about, in-house versus what the consultant can do, and I also shared that with everybody, say, hey, take a look at this scope. Let's see if there's anything in there, so I'd say by the end of this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Chief Brooks?
Thank you, Mayor. To let everybody know that we sworn in 2 new officers today. That was a good thing to help out with our manpower issues. Also, I'd like to report that our Shop with the Cop is December 18th. It's a Monday evening. It starts at 5:30 right here. If you folks want to have a really good night, you should come out and take a look. It's a lot of fun. And I would ask that council approve the donation of weight equipment from Mr. Jim Smith to the police department. He's a retired CPD officer and has been following our building process and would like to help out and donate. It's about $3,000 worth of professional weight equipment. And that's all I have.
Very good. I think we have a motion to accept that tonight, don't we, Mr. Hickman?
I have it on my list.
Very good. Any questions for Bruce?
Chief, what time did you say the shop with the cop was again?
5:30 right here.
Thank you.
Mr. Barstow?
Chief, does the 2 new officers, does that put us back up to full authorization?
It's, the first guy, Josh, he is the full-time. He replaces Officer Collis.
Okay.
Tyler Walker, he's actually a resident here at Pataskala. He's covering a part-time spot until after the first of the year. We have a new position in there, and he will assume that.
Okay.
And then we'll, later on in the year, we'll replace the part-time slot.
Okay, okay, I was just curious, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any committee chair reports tonight? Mr. Walther? I'm looking right at
Okay,
you.
sorry, I was gonna cover. We had kind of a long report here for the Streets Committee. We reviewed 13 different items with Alan and staff. Oak Meadow Drive was reviewed. 50% plans are in and being reviewed now. We're looking to, if there aren't any major issues with the review, try to have that out for bid mid-May, or early May, hopefully. I think Tim actually said April, but April, May timeframe of next year, try to get it out on the street to get bids for it. And we received a revised estimate that was relatively the same as the previous one that we got 45 days ago, for about $630,000? 640,000, and in that has $50,000 worth of contingencies in that. So hopefully we can get that number in at that budget amount. We reviewed the Graham Road Cowmore project. Alan has a few things to go over with Mr. Zetz on that one regarding some private drainage items. But other than that, that is progressing along for engineering next year and work the following year, correct, Alan?
Correct.
Okay. And then detention and retention basin inventory and analysis. There's a few items that are being evaluated to try to enforce and encourage private and actually non-known detention basins to comply with storm regulations as we continue to write and will write changes into the storm regulations to make sure that those operate correctly. One in particular is the Kentucky Fried Chicken basin. Talked about the Columbia Road culvert replacement, and as Alan mentioned in his report, there are a few issues that have occurred with that project, namely with the Southwest Linking Water sewer and water force main not being marked during the design and during construction has caused some problems with the implementation of the culvert, and will result in, I think, a somewhat a project that is not totally up to our hope and desire for the culvert replacement. Alan and BJ are looking through that project to see what remedies can occur with that. I guess if you want more information, you can talk with them about that. The Columbia Road Bridge and it looks like the culvert will open under temporary pavement December 18th. The Columbia Road Bridge replacement is also moving down a path of having to have some work done next spring due to an error that was made when the deck was poured. It has some irregularities in the deck, final course of the concrete course of the deck, which will therefore have to be temporarily fixed for the winter, opened up, and then next spring be closed back down for a couple weeks to mill and replace the surface of that deck. Taylor Road culvert replacement is not going to move forward in 2017. It will have to be evaluated to move forward in 2018. We have some issues with the culvert contractor not responding as far as schedule and construction for that project. Alan is going to look further into whether we actually have the concrete pipe fabricated and ready to go or not, and then I think is also another one to talk with Mr. Zetz about next steps on how to deal with the contractor on that. The good news of the evening was the 2017 ramp update is completed. The punch lists are all done. There aren't any items outstanding, and there was a cost savings of $190,000 for this 2017 ramp projects. We talked about some items or some ideas to apply some of that money to, as well as retain some of that money for potential overruns on a couple projects for next year. A couple projects that Alan believes will have some overruns. So one of those three different items that we're going to focus on are drainage problems, some in-house drainage problems to fund the materials for. Second would be a small roadway that can fit, the puzzle can fit together to fund that $60,000, $70,000 type project that we can add to the 2018 ramp. And then also Mel, while she was here, mentioned that, and rightfully so, with the school projects that are happening up on Cable and Summit, some planning ahead to accommodate those schools and the increased traffic should be looked at, and we can do that ahead of time and understand what may or may not be necessary in that area. Next item was Headley's Mill, and talked about an issue with a encroachment, an erosion of the existing creek bed along the side of the roadway. Alan's going to look into that to try to temporarily protect that roadway from subsidence for the next 6 months, and then evaluate it under next year's roadway plans, roadway projects. The 2018 ramp overview. We currently have a budget of $618,000, correct? Is it $618,000?
For the 2018 ramp?
Yes.
650.
650,000, right. 50,000, and he has an RFP going out in the next couple weeks for the engineering on that project. It'll be a next year engineering. The engineering was budgeted for 2017. Obviously, that'll move to 2018 for the engineering, and hopefully put that out to bid in the May timeframe also. Drainage project scoping and priority review. We talked about some different projects that need to get done and are on Alan's list for the next essentially 3 to 5 year drainage problems, issues to be evaluated. And that was all that was in the committee meeting.
Okay, Any other committee chair reports? Yes, sir.
Jamie has requested that we have a finance committee meeting, probably the second meeting in January, to discuss the audit the new audit procedure that is in the charter that went into effect in January. So just FYI, whoever's gonna be on the finance committee, that exciting and gripping topic will be Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any other committee chair reports? Okay, on to unfinished business. Ordinance 2017-4302 for a third reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Hicken.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Barstow. Kathy, when you're ready, third reading.
Ordinance 2017-4302. This is the third reading, an ordinance to make supplemental appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2017.
Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Looking for a motion to adopt. Yes, sir.
I made a motion to adopt ordinance 2017-4302.
Got a motion by Mr. Barstow.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hicken. Discussion? And roll.
Barstow?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Hicken?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Hayes?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance passes. On to new business, ordinance 2017-4303 for a first reading. Moved by Mr. Hicken, seconded by Mr. Barstow. Kathy, when you're ready, first reading.
Ordinance 2017-4303. This is the first reading, an ordinance to amend the Pataskla Schedule of Fees.
Discussion? Ordinance 2017-4304 for a first reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Lee. Kathy, when you're ready.
Ordinance 2017-4304. This is the first reading, an ordinance approving a memorandum of understanding with the Licking Heights Local School District in connection with possible property tax exemptions in a portion of the Pataskla Corporate Park as expressed in the attached Exhibit A.
Discussion? Ordinance 2017-4305 for a first reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second again?
seconded by Mr. Lee. Kathy, when you're ready, first reading.
Ordinance 2017-4305. This is the first reading, an ordinance approving a memorandum of understanding with the Southwest Licking School District in connection with possible property tax exemptions in a portion of the Pataskla Corporate Park, as expressed in the attached Exhibit A.
Discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I would just like to point out to council, the previous ordinance, 4304, I believe Licking Heights has looked at and feels very comfortable with.
Correct.
4305, we may see some more comments from Southwest Licking.
I anticipate getting some comments from Southwest Licking that we can review and, if we agree to or don't agree, would be incorporated.
But council should know that those may be coming our way.
Yeah.
We have
Just
two
an
more
FYI.
readings. Yeah, with two more readings, we've got plenty of time then, right?
Yeah, third reading for these will be January 16th.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Tim. Ordinance, any other discussion on that? Okay. Ordinance 2017-4306 for a first reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Hicken. Kathy, when you're ready, first reading.
Ordinance 2017-4306. This is the first reading, an ordinance to amend Chapter 171 of the codified ordinances of the City of Pataskla regarding municipal income tax and declaring an emergency.
Yes, sir.
Oh, go ahead, Tim.
I was just gonna point out to council also, in this instance, Mr. Nicholson had notified some of us, or maybe all of us, I don't know, it was in his report, I believe, but, in this instance, declaring an emergency will allow this ordinance to go into effect after the third reading immediately, and it needs to go into effect before January 31st, I believe.
Correct.
Which
So
it will.
It will. Third reading would be January 16th. It'll be approved as an emergency immediately and in effect immediately. So we'll meet that deadline.
That's why it says emergency, as
Yeah.
opposed to other typical ordinances.
Any other discussion on that? First reading. Very good. On to resolutions. Resolution 2017-063. A resolution providing. Did you say something?
I did.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to pull resolution 2017-063 off the table.
Okay, got a motion to pull it off the table by Mr. Hicken. I need a second.
Second.
Mr. Lee. Kathy, when you're ready.
Howe,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
No.
Lee,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes?
Walther,
No.
Okay, off the table. Discussion?
I would thank the mayor for giving me his, one of my big concerns about this was, whether or not, did it cause the city to be involved in some type of promises or, some contractual obligations? As near as I can tell from the information the mayor gave us, there is not even any signatory obligations as a result of this. It's simply changing the name of a committee or a subcommittee at Morpsey itself. So I thank the mayor for getting me the information he got me, after asking some subsequent questions. I'm okay with
Any-
continuing.
Very good.
No, personally, I'm okay with passing this, as you'll find out when we read it all.
Very good. Yeah, I think we need to read it, don't we?
Yeah, it's currently off the table and we're in the discussion, so we need a motion to adopt.
Well, I'll make that motion. I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2017-063.
Got a motion to adopt. Need a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hayes. Discussion? And roll, please.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Nope.
Lee,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes?
Walther,
No.
Howe,
Yes.
Okay, resolution passes. Resolution 2017-049, a resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to enter into contract with Robertson Construction for the construction of a new municipal police station. Discussion?
Need a second, right?
Yeah, you need a second before
Okay.
we open discussion.
Who was the first?
Tim was
First
me.
and
Yeah.
second, okay.
Yes.
Mr. Hicken and Mr. Lee, for the record. Discussion?
I wanted to ask, BJ, were you able to pull together any kind of budget numbers, summary?
Or was it?
Okay.
If I can, just real quick
Go
too, if council has any questions, Mr. King's here from Horn and King, and then Dan Stevens from Robertson Construction is here as well, that can answer any questions, as far as the building itself is concerned, just wanted to mention that.
Go ahead.
So, I guess I took some time, and I may have some of these facts wrong, but I wanted to make sure, I wanted to talk about this. I went back through what the needs assessment had to say back in January, and then throughout the, well, I guess before that even, but throughout the last 12 months, kind of the budgets that we've talked about. And I wanted to make sure that I had this clear. So, BJ, when I look at both a breakdown that was given to us on 11/20, as well as a breakdown that you had given us, or the numbers you had given us in the report for this evening. In general, they're close. I don't exactly know why there's essentially $13,000 difference, but whatever the case is, I want to make sure I understand, in the budget that you're giving us, the $42,500 for the interconnect cable is not in that budget, correct?
Correct, that's gonna be paid for out of general funds to support this building.
When the assessment was done and the budget was originally put together back in January of this year, that $42,000 was in the debt.
It was one of the, soft costs, I think, that we had in the original.
So essentially, we didn't change the budget, we just removed the $42,500.
Change the funding source, to the general fund.
Okay, so with the number that I have, and it doesn't matter which one I use, it's close enough. If I include that $42,500, even though it's not part of the debt, I show us having a essentially budget that we're going to be utilizing of $4,514,640. On top of that, is it right to include the $538,492 that Mr. King included in his, previously paid for by other funds?
If you wanna include it in the overall budget for the project, if you look at.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yes,
That's
if you
all I'm
look
trying
at
to
the
do.
debt issuance, no, because we're looking at the debt issue, that 500 and some is already paid off.
Exactly, and that's
Yeah.
fair to bring that up. I just, all I'm trying to do is come up with a final, what's the
End of the day,
final?
what every
What's the
dollar's
number we
spent.
can anticipate the city paying for this, whether it's in debt or it's paid for by other funds? So I come up with $5,053,132, if you include that 538,000 in change. That does not include a shelter. That does not have the $115,000 in it that we now know is the budget for the shelter,
The cruiser
correct?
shelter,
Cruiser
115,
shelter.
yeah.
Correct. And that cruiser shelter, as I understood it from the last meeting, it's just really a frame with a roof on it.
Correct.
Is that still the case?
Yeah.
I know we had talked about pool barns and other things, but I think that's still the case. We're talking about a frame with a top on it.
I can give you background on that if you'd like.
Not right now, not yet. I just wanted to make sure that that's what we're still talking about.
That's where we're still talking, that 115, that's what that would get us.
Okay, so when I went back, originally, we had a budget of, I'm just use round numbers, $5 million. And that included the shelter, that included all of the soft costs that we've already paid. And if I am understanding correctly, what I call a cost to loan money was included in that $5 million.
Correct. Yeah, the cost of issuance is included in there.
Okay, so let me just make sure I understand. Does the numbers that you have given us, I show through Jamie's report about an $899,000 cost of issuance, basically the interest and different costs that we'll pay for. Yeah, Jamie put it on his back of his page.
Yeah, I know.
That's what the no-call.
You're looking at the life of the loan and the interest and everything through the amortization schedule?
Exactly right. In the cheapest form of loan.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we add that in on top of that, then we're basically very close to $6 million.
Well, I don't think you could add the interest, because the interest is already baked into the cost of the debt.
But we're gonna pay it. I mean, it's just like if you have a home loan.
We're gonna,
We're gonna
yes,
pay that number,
Yes.
whatever the case is.
yes.
Depending on which one we choose, it could be the 899, it could be $1.5 million. Depending on which one we choose how to do this. So I guess what I wanted to make sure that I understood and make sure I understood correctly was this, while we had a budget and we tried to hit it, let me back up just a second. I wanna say, I do believe we need a police station. I don't want this to be inferred or understood as something that is negative towards the police station. All I'm doing is trying to understand what the final number is, when we're all said and done, what the city's gonna pay, or would pay with an approval of this. Debt and outside of debt, interest, so forth. And I guess I'm a little bit concerned that we've gone from a $5 million budget to now a $6 million budget when you put all these things into the equation. And that's what I tried to do. Yeah, it's right there. I don't know if there's anything that can be done about that. I again want to mention that I don't feel the shelter is a big a value to us as it could be. If it had been able to be included in the form that it had originally been contemplated with sides and electric and so forth. I guess I would strongly I would want to relook at the shelter at least. I mean, one last thing. We also have contemplated several $100,000 worth of savings. And those are the things you included on the back of your report.
Right.
Including a gate. There's no landscaping included in this. We changed some things. We don't have brickwork in some places where we did. We now have wood siding and so forth. So again, I'm only pointing out that we're spending more money and we're getting less than what we had anticipated initially. And I certainly don't want to, I don't want to agree to a shelter that is half of what we wanted for prices that we were already over, even when you don't include it. I guess those are my statements. And if I've said anything incorrect, I certainly want to make sure you point that out. numbers wise?
Yeah.
Okay,
Quick math.
yeah, quick math.
Any other discussion? Yes.
To the cruiser shelter point, I would agree with Andy that I think that we've, taken the sides off that.
Actually, the price includes sides.
This one does, the 115. Okay, so when we talked last meeting, we were throwing around does he need to say his name and all?
Yes.
Okay, I figured he did, go ahead.
Dave King, Horn and King Architects, 6265 Riverside Drive, Dublin, 43017.
So we were kicking around the $18 per square foot. One thing I did not figure into that was the prevailing wage. So around 4,000 square foot, that's roughly 112, 115,000. So is that, I'm sorry, to back up, it's $28 a square foot, correct?
Correct.
So is that $10 per square foot? Is that reasonable? And we've added the sides back in. Is that that's still a pretty big amount of money, 115,000 for a 3-sided building with electric, a hose bib, and concrete
Well,
floor.
and Mr. Stevens can speak to that as well, but what I did was, after our meeting, I contacted a company that specializes in wood frame construction.
Okay.
And I described to them the project, and in our conversation, he said you could be, this is adding the electrical and the plumbing, the infrastructure and the pavement's already in the base bid, but to finish it out. As I said, wood sides, a low profile roof, not a shingle truss roof. He said you could be $25 to $30 a square foot, so I used the median number to include prevailing wages, electric, water, for a good commercial structure.
Okay. I would love for Rob, the representative, I'd love to hear what makes that type of building so worth 115,000.
So Dan Stevens, I'm with Robertson Construction, 1801 Thornwood Drive. So, I mean, we're just using, historical data, and it's not really, you can't say it's a pole barn like you build, in your backyard.
Sure.
So just based on historical data, prevailing wage, the electric, the plumbing, it's just a budget at this point.
Okay.
So if you go forward at this time, David will finish drawings, and then we'll actually take that out and get multiple bids on it. So we'll send it out to, 3 or 4 lumber companies, and then we'll get labor costs.
Okay.
So I'm also, included in that, I think you have to have a ceiling, so that, we have a liner panel on the ceiling. You don't want it open and have birds and wasps and everything else growing in.
I definitely see the value in it. I'm glad the sides are back in. I think we need a cruiser shelter, but that number just seemed high to me. I guess my last question to go with that is, obviously it could be cheaper. Do you feel, in your opinion, that if doing that project while you're doing the other project, it would be cheaper now rather than to come back and do it later?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so that 115, you already have, your supervision on site, you have a job trailer, you're mobilized. So, if you come back in a year, you have to have all that on top of it. So it's gonna go up exponentially.
And you can buy materials and everything?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess with that being said, and we've talked about this cruiser shelter a lot, it's kind of been a sticking point for me. I still think that $115,000 for a 3-sided building is too much, but we have got it down from $199, so we've got the sides back on it. So we're down $85,000 from where we started. I'd still like to see it under 100 at least, but I'm prepared to vote yes on it.
And we would, as Dan mentioned, we would continue to explore it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Hicken.
I have a question about, let's say, thank you very much for coming tonight, by the way, to both of you. Let's say you've taken your best shot at it, but everything that comes in says it's 135. Are we allowed, without penalty, to line item that particular item out of the bid?
We do it as a change order.
And there's no
It's
charge for the change?
non-performing.
I know I asked you that.
Yes, you did, and there's no charge, and it would be a change order process,
Just a non-performed change order, yeah.
not on the original contract.
Okay.
Because we bid as an alternate to begin with.
Mr. Barstow?
Yeah, the only thing that can, kind of create a visual wall for me, a new police station, that's beyond debate. The thing that concerns me about this project, in addition to some of the a lot of the changes and the increases in costs. And I think Randy's coming up with the $6 million is the, if you add up what the 15-year debt is and then add on what we've already paid, it's 5.8 million and change. I try not to do math in public, but it bumps right up to close to $6 million. I guess the concern that I have, and council should bear in mind with it when you vote on this, is that this debt payment trumps everything else, including payroll. If we have a shortfall for some, I hope we don't, but if we do, this debt payment by, and Mr. Zess will correct me if I'm wrong, under the ORC, we have to pay this debt, it comes first, it is a first lien on city dollars. And so if we are short, so I just think that's just my concern with this. It's not that I'm not bullish on the city, it's just that's my concern, is the way in which it's being funded, that gives me concern.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. For me, there's a little bit of gulp involved with it, because it's a little bit of a leap. And I think for me to, what I really wanted to get, and what I subsequently got after calling and discussing it with them was, do you think that our funds can support this? I totally get anybody that thinks that maybe that answer is no, but I tend to listen to because I don't have the first clue about advanced finance or borrowing bonds and stuff like that. So I tend to listen to that recommendation, and so I also I think we all agree that it's necessary. It's the question of, are we gonna kick it farther down the road? Are we gonna wait? For me, I don't know that, just for me, I think the time is now to move forward. We've certainly done a lot of investigation. Doesn't mean that there's not a significant cost involved.
Any other discussion? Yes, sir.
BJ, do you know what Jamie will be recommending for the funding mechanism out of those 4 choices? I chose the cheapest one. I don't know that it's the best. That will be the best, and it's a zero call, so, I mean, I don't know if Jamie's gonna sit back and say that's the best idea. All the other ones get more expensive, obviously.
The others do get more expensive, but if you look at the second one, the 15-year with 5, with call 5, the price differential between those is pretty nominal, so I'd like to have the flexibility to call it and not be locked in for the life of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess, once again, showing my ignorance, can you explain what that means?
Refund, I guess you could call it. Yeah, it's what we did, if you remember a couple years ago, we called and refunded a number of utility bonds
Yes.
for a better rate. So you look at it as almost refinancing your house, to go in, sell them, get a better rate. So over the life of them, you're paying.
That is what I thought it meant, so that's what
Yep.
I wanna make sure.
Non-call locks the rate.
Right.
It's like a fixed-
Non-call locks the
All
rate for
terms.
15 years.
Yeah, all
15 years, so, well, for the
All
life,
terms.
it's a 15-year.
5-year call.
It's
5-year call, yeah.
It's
Right.
the second one.
The second one is after 5, you can.
If you look at the cost differential, it's
So I just,
pretty nominal, but I think, a little bit.
I would assume the second 2 choices are probably not his favorite choices.
No, the 20 is, that came from Navy, just out of curiosity. I said, hey,
Okay.
can you have them see what it would be over 20 years? Just out of curiosity, see if there was, for some reason, gonna be a game changer in there, where it's like, oh, 20 years is attractive. I didn't anticipate that it would be, and it certainly is not.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I talked to Jamie about this before this final came out. I know he was in favor of the shorter term. I don't remember discussing the call provision with him, but as my recollection, he does prefer that, because it does give us, especially when the rate is so close and the overall cost is so close, it gives us that flexibility, because we did save quite a bit of money on the utility.
We
bonds
did.
when we refined.
And I'm in favor of the shorter rate. I just asked him to run the 20 out of curiosity to see if there would be something there that says, oh, that's it, and there's not.
Mike or Suzanne? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think, like Tim said, the time is now to do this, but we are reaching on our budget. And so going forward with this, if we do approve this tonight, even if we don't, because it still needs to be done, we need to continue to explore cost-saving options as we see them, as you move forward through the project, continue to look for ways to save any amount of money. And again, with the cruiser shelter, it seems like an awful lot of money for such a bare bones building. So I'd like to see that as low as it can get, and anything really over the 115, I think is, for me, is a no-go.
Certainly, and I'm very pleased that Robertson, if you decide to move forward, is the contractor. We've worked with them before, as I've mentioned. Excellent firm. We'll work very diligently to look for anything that we have a potential savings.
Suzanne?
I just like to say, I can remember when I first got on council, I was scared, well, I'm still scared to death every time, but I was absolutely scared to death. I remember sitting right at that table. We started our first meeting to discuss this awesome endeavor, to see how far we have come, to see how we can work together. We're not throwing things at each other. We can be big boys and girls, and we can put together a plan for our community. I just think it's awesome that we can bring down costs and provide something for our community that's gonna keep everybody safe. And you're right, it's time. It's long overdue. The structure that you are working out of is, I don't wanna be rude, but it's a sad state of affairs. And, this is something exciting for our community, but a big jump. So I'm glad that we don't take it lightly. It's good conversation. So I appreciate you guys being here to have it with us. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor? And you've heard me say for the last 2.5 years that we have really taken our time. I know that we had 7 people to try and go through this. We started with a group of the officers on their input, Mike's input, Deputy Chief Mike Bowles, the chief's input, hundreds and hundreds of hours of meeting and really going from the front door to the back door, making sure that we had an efficient station. And that's one thing I'm glad we never, and of course the chief was very adamant about that. We were not going to change anything in the station because one, we needed that room for us to grow for the next 25, 30 years. And anything less than that would have been less for the department and not 100%. So I think we've really done our homework. Mr. Barstow, got one more word?
Which one word? Chief, you're stuck with me for another 4 years. So, just keep trying to work with the department to cut costs, because this is your department. I mean, this is taking a big chunk out of the budget. I know you realize that, but just keep trying to work within the department, encourage your officers to find ways to save money, because you start putting a little bit here, a little bit there, and pretty soon, those were gone. And BJ, I have a question for you. What are we anticipating taking from the rentals and other income we get from the building towards this? Are we still planning on doing that?
Yeah, we created that fund, the capital fund, that every dollar from rental goes into. And it collects about $125,000 per year, and that'll be dedicated for the next 15 years paying this.
Okay, thanks.
So that's a police shelter right there, right?
Years worth of revenue.
Year 16 maybe.
Kathy, roll call.
Still
Wait,
Mayor, I've got one
Andy
more.
has some.
Okay.
Yeah, I just, I wanna reiterate, Chief, that I am absolutely for a new police station. It's absolutely necessary. That's easy to say. It's easy to say for our community to grow. But this is 20% over budget, and that to me is substantial. And the stuff I went back through over the last 12 months, and really the 8 months before our first bid, was $5 million was it. It was the ceiling, that was it. It was repeated over and over and over again. And I went back and I found it in several meetings. Mel, I don't want to, there were several councilmen that said that was it. And we're at 6, and we're 20% over. And that, to me, is not acceptable. I think that a police shelter, or a police station can be built for less than that. One that can fulfill our needs and can easily grow with this community. I'm hopeful that there are ways to continue to investigate how to build a police station for less. We've taken a lot of stuff out of this police station and we're still over budget. So if you really want to think about it, the stuff that was in there that we've removed and the cost being higher, we're more than 20% over budget building this police station that is necessary for our community. So that's, I wanted to make sure that I let you know, I'm absolutely supportive of the police department, and know that this is in need.
Any other final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll say, just really quickly, we may be 20% over what we talked about before the needs assessment happened, or in the old days. That may be.
This was after the needs assessment.
Maybe, and had the bids gone out, I mean, we know, sitting here as a councilman, I never said or asked, can we only spend $5 million, and was told yes. That's not what happened. We were given ballpark estimates, what do we think it's gonna be? It went out to bid, it went out, it came back high, we removed some things, and it came in line with what the finance director and the city administrator say is doable without wrecking us. So I don't think, we may be 20% over some arbitrary number that was talked about at one point, but we're not 20% over what the city says we can afford, or what we can still use to build this. So if that was the case, if the city said, look, we can only spend $450,000, and we were 20% over that, I wouldn't vote for it. So I respect the comments, but I want to make it clear that I don't think that we're 20% over what we were told we can afford. And if I'm wrong, then I'm also willing to listen to that. I don't know, that's not what.
No, and I've said this before, you know, the amount that's represented here is also represented in the budget. It is affordable moving forward. The administration would never recommend it if we couldn't afford it, moving forward. So it's in the budget, it's in our 5-year CIP, so, you know, it's supported in there for the next 5 years, that we'll be able to meet this obligation.
And you know, Jamie's not here, but here's a guy that is extremely cautious and came to almost all of our meetings that we had and gave some very good insight along the way. And at the end of the day, when I see Jamie not hesitating, because he feels very comfortable, BJ's very comfortable, I put a lot into their stuff, because obviously I'm not a financial wizard, and not saying that Jamie is a financial wizard, but he does look out for the city, and look what we've done with the budget, and starting earlier and working hard on it, and doing a 5-year plan, making us work and think harder. I just think the money part of it is pretty good. Did you have a comment, Mr. Lee?
Yeah, I'd just like to kind of piggyback on what Tim's saying. I do remember when, like Suzanne said 2 years ago, when we first got on council, when we were kind of coming in as we were discussing this, maybe 5 million was discussed then, but let's face it, that was 2 years ago, and the economy's changed. I mean, how much has the prices gone up in 2 years?
A lot. The economy's really good.
So I guess
prices go up.
I mean,
but you know, this year actually there's been a lot of natural disasters, so material prices are escalating every day.
So if I said we'd like to stay around 5 million 2 years ago, maybe. I don't know if I said it or not, but if I did, it's 2 years ago and things have changed, and the need hasn't. I guess that's my final thoughts, is the need has not. These guys deserve a police station where they can plug it in an iPhone and it doesn't pop a breaker in the basement. So, and our citizens deserve that too. And I trust BJ and I trust Jamie, and that's what they're paid to do. That's what they're professionals, and that's why we have them sitting here to lean on that. And that's all I'm gonna say about it.
Last words.
Yes. Last words. Piggyback on what you said, Mayor, about how if Jamie isn't going to hesitate, how many awards does the man have on his wall? And we're constantly recognizing what he can do for the city and how good he is with members. I have a great amount of faith in what he says, so that's my final word.
Okay, last chance. All right, Kathy, roll call, please. And gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and expertise and input. And
Thank you.
Barstow,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walter,
No.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2017-069, a resolution authorizing the city administrator to enter into a contract with the Licking County Board of Commissioners for reimbursement of legal counsel for indigent defendants for the city of Pataskala, Licking County, Ohio. Moved by Mr. Hicken,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Lee. Discussion? And,
Just quickly,
yes,
even though I accept indigent appointments, I don't accept any that involve the city. Just a clarification. Thank you.
thank you, sir. Any other discussion? And roll.
Lee,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2017-071, a resolution approving a contract with the United Steel Paper and Forestry, Rubber Manufacturing, Energy Allied Industrial, and Service Workers International Union for the administration of public service, utility, and other clerical staff wages, benefits, and other terms and conditions of employment for the period of January 1st, 2017 through December 31st, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Discussion? And roll.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Resolution passes. Was that supposed?
No, go ahead.
Okay, gotcha.
Before you go on, I do want to jump back in.
Okay.
I have heartburn right now. 43, ordinance 4306, we drafted as an emergency, and I also agree that Jamie is a financial wizard, but I drafted that piece of legislation to take effect January 1st because it is a change in the tax code. I wasn't comfortable with the amendments being made and adopted at the end of January for the tax code starting January 1. I guess but if Jamie says, well, it could be, that can happen, that could be okay. There are certain things I never play with, and that is like deadlines to file notices of appeal, when tax codes become effective, things where maybe you can't undo if they're wrong. So if it was me, I would strongly consider going back and passing that as an emergency today. Because if you take a look at section 5, there's emergency language in there, but it takes effect January 1. I don't see any trouble with that. If for some reason it wasn't supposed to be in effect, it has to take effect January 1st because of the change of the tax code. I would suggest council take a look at doing that tonight as opposed to waiting until the end of January to then taking it retroactively effect January 1.
Mr. King?
So, let me just make sure I'm following. So, go back, pass emergency tonight, so it takes effect by January 1 instead of going forward in second and third and having it take effect January 31st. Or January 16th.
Right.
You want to have it prior to.
It could be adopted tonight, but then the sections could take effect January 1 since that is truly the beginning of the year and that's when the tax code those changes will take effect starting January 1st. That's why we had drafted it that particular way as opposed to then these provisions of the tax code either taking effect in the middle of the month when they could presumably apply January 1st or then somehow becoming retroactively effective January 1 after being adopted as an emergency in the middle of the month.
So, it says we need to waive readings and.
I do, and I think you do, so I would suggest you waive the readings tonight as opposed to waiting to the third reading and then I would waive readings, have it drafted as an emergency.
Yes, Mr. Barstow.
and declare an emergency.
What's that?
Declaring an emergency.
And declare an emergency.
Okay. Mr. Barstow?
Mr. Mayor, I have a motion. I move that we dispense with the readings as required in Charter Section 4.02 of the Pataskala City Charter and Ordinance 2017-4306.
I have a motion. Need a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Lee. Discussion? And roll.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Motion passes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I make a motion that we adopt Ordinance 2017-4306. I guess I have to say that because Mr. Zed says I have to say this and declare an emergency.
Got a motion on the floor.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hicken. Discussion? And roll, please.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walter.
Yes.
Ordinance passes.
Thank you, I will sleep well tonight.
Thanks,
I
Frank.
think, Mr. Mayor, I think, kind of a suggestion, I think when we declare an emergency, I think, shouldn't we get one of those, like those police lights from the beginning of the old Hawaii 5-0, you know, with the.
Okay, I can like turn it, I can turn it
Let's do
on.
that, Chief, can we do that? Do you have like some old light bars?
The detective puts up there.
Yeah, yeah, like from a Starsky and Hutch,
Yes.
sure, yes. Okay, thank you, thank
My
you.
first
Mayor.
detective car actually had one of those here.
With
And
a
you
phone that had a magnet that you put on the top.
Did you slide across the hood?
No.
Okay. All right. Additional citizens' comments. Anybody wish to speak? All right, we'll go around the room tonight. We'll start with Mr. Powell.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry. You have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the donation of athletic equipment to the Pataskala Police Department.
Okay, very
Second.
good. Seconded by Mr. Barstow. Discussion and roll.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walter.
Yes.
Motion passes. Sorry about that. I'd already turned the page and went right past motions. Okay, and additional citizens' comments. Anybody wish to speak? Okay, we're gonna go around the room. Mr. Powell, we'll start with you.
I was not able to make the cookie walk, but I made it down there for the parade, and I heard nothing but that's good. And I heard nothing but great things about the whole production. They're just talking about how they love this about a small town and how this is what makes towns great. It's nothing we pass up here that makes Pataskala great. Stuff like this. So I think that's awesome, and I can't wait to see it get bigger and better over the years. I had something else, but I forgot. So, since
You're
the
not even 40
last
yet,
meeting, I know, right? So since it was our last meeting, just want to say Merry Christmas, everybody. Enjoy your holidays, and
you.
that's it.
Well, I want to say kudos to your church because what a great idea. They handed out wrapping paper. Rolls of wrapping paper. Now, what a great idea. They're walking up and down the street with these rolls of wrapping paper. It was really cool.
And that's something we do every year,
Yeah.
called our wrapping paper blitz, and normally we've just gone door to door and handed it, but decided to go down to the parade this year, and there were so many people, they ran out within 10 minutes
Awesome.
of being down there. So,
Awesome idea.
yeah.
Very good. So, Merry Christmas to you, sir. Andy?
Yeah, I just wanted to add it to the cookie walk. The other thing that I had heard down there was numerous people saying, I've lived here for 15 years and I didn't even know these businesses existed. I didn't know certain businesses were even here. And I thought, one, that was sad, but also, two, that thank goodness we have something that can promote the businesses. And the businesses, really stepped up. Making 400 cookies is phenomenal. I think if they had made 500, we still would have run out. They could have made 1,000, we would have run out. So, as Sarah has said, and it isn't, I mean, the cookies are great, they're a great promotional item. I brought them, if you want to see some of these cookies, they're awesome. There's some really really creative cookies, business cards on them, or business statements on them, whatever you want to call it. They really did a great job, a fantastic job. So, all the volunteers that helped get it all together, but it was the businesses that I think really put their foot forward and made it a success. The other thing I obviously echo what Mike has said, hope everybody has a safe and happy holiday, no matter where you are and what you're doing.
I'd like to just say that as a Main Street resident, it's pretty powerful to walk out on your front porch. I was passing out cookies at our future little shop on Depro, and by the time I got through the side yard from that shop to my house, my front porch was filled with former students, colleagues, and family. it was packed, and then I think it was probably 3-4 deep on the side of Main Street watching the parade. I saw students go by and churches go by. It was kind of an emotional experience too. I've lived on Main Street 12 years. I've grown up here, and for years, my husband has said it was kind of like the Field of Dreams thing. It'll happen. It'll happen. It's gonna happen. You know, we've always got these dreams for downtown and for Pataskala, and it's happening. Like, we're literally in that moment right now where it is happening. Good things are happening. People are noticing that, and people are stepping up. Churches, community. I mean, my neighbors passed out 400 cookies. Not a business. They took their dining room table outside into their front yard, and their entire family passed out cookies. Just a residence. It's happening. So it's a pretty awesome feeling to see it. I just kind of took it in. It was kind of like a Hallmark movie, and it just kind of watching people, and it's a pretty awesome feeling. So, and we can say it's our town. So Merry Christmas and stay healthy.
Yeah, Saturday was a fun day for me because we had the Rustic Furniture Place had a ribbon cutting at 10 o'clock, and they were very excited. Of course, I like that kind of stuff. And then you know, a couple hours later, I'm going down to the cookie walk, and again, perfect storm, perfect weather. It was just so much fun. And didn't Ramsey do the drone? So I can't wait to see. I mean, unless you were walking around, which I didn't get a chance to, you could just tell there was hundreds of people milling around. So I can't wait to see that drone footage, because that'll be really cool. Because and again, the street closed. It was just like I mean, if we'd had a little snow on the ground, it probably just would have been perfect. So good stuff. Mr. Hicken?
I'll truncate my cookie walk happiness just to say that I thought it was great as everybody else did. I want to say thanks to the OSU students for the work that they put in. I look out, I see Mr. Ramsey out there. Will this be your last meeting here?
No.
Okay.
Well, then never mind.
Well, I want to make sure you're acknowledged.
Here's a cookie.
So I didn't want that to not happen. So I'll make sure that it does whenever that happens to be. So, and that's all I have.
Mr. Lee?
Well, I think I'll share Tim's thoughts there on the cookie walk. I don't know. I mean, it was awesome. We have an awesome community, and I don't know that I can say anything else that anybody else hasn't. So I'd also just like to congratulate the chief. It's a big night for our city. You guys deserve this building, and our community deserves this building. And I know that you guys have done more with less for years, and you guys are still great. So I think it's a big night. I don't want to diminish that at all. So congratulations, and all the work you guys did on it as well. You guys really are the ones that went out and did the legwork. You deserve this. So thank you. And Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
I've said this to 4 or 5 people a day, and I wasn't getting tired of saying it either. But you know, we've created history here in Pataskala today. And it was funny. I was down at that ED 411 talking to the Newark's economic development director, and I said, we haven't built a building here since 1916. And he kind of laughed and he said, were you serious? And I go, yeah, I really am serious. We haven't built a new building since 1916, and just, you know, again, history made today with this new police station and swearing in 2 officers. It really is a great day for the PD. So, Mr. Barstow.
Well, 4 years have just flown by. After the first few meetings, I thought they'd never get here. But it's been enjoyable. I've learned an experience. I've learned a lot, and I have to say I've enjoyed it. That's why I asked the voters to send me back for another 4 years, and I'm glad that they did. So I look forward to that, and I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion and a second? Discussion? And roll.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Ralph.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.
See if they get over.
No.